day. New stakeholders are coming to the table, and there's many other components that I'm sure that you're experiencing. We can be excited, thumbs up, because we're given options to people who previously did not have access to them. Or the downside is maybe we're providing solutions without determining the appropriateness. And the results can be either immediate success. These are the ones I suggest that we see in our media, and which educates people and has brought a lot of new people to our field. But it can also result in premature abandonment. If something is not right, it doesn't work, then the solution is not pursued. Let's be careful of that for sure. And Carrie now is going to share some specific information for you that she has resources about.
Okay, so as Debbie mentioned, iPads are very popular right now, but we did want to make sure that people are aware there are other options within the field of mobile technologies. So mobile technologies is a term that we use. It lumps together all of the things that are portable, that are generic, so think you can buy it at Best Buy, and those easily available devices. As Debbie mentioned, this is a new subset of our field because they're easily available. Our dedicated companies that we've had for years and years, you can't necessarily pick up their products at Best Buy or Walmart like you can these mobile technologies. And these mobile technologies include things like music or game players, so iPod Touches, even Nintendo DS can run a few apps. Smartphones are definitely popular right now, things like the Droid or the iPhone, Samsung Galaxy, as well as the tablet computers, so things like the Kindle Fire, the iPad, or the Galaxy Tab. There's also a new one from Google called the Nexus that I really want for Christmas. So these mobile technologies, this group of devices, are things that can run apps. That's short for applications, or you may refer to it as software programs. And these apps can be used by people with disabilities and or professionals. So because they run these apps and because they're easily available, these mobile technologies are becoming increasingly popular for people to use as assistive technology. So that is to help with people with disabilities, help them gain independence and improve their skills. But to talk through some of the differences in mobile technologies, I want to make sure everyone's aware that the products vary by both hardware and software. So the hardware, you can think of what the device is or who manufactures it. Anything made by Apple tends to have an I in front of its name. The iPod, the iPad, the iPad mini, versus some of the products that maybe run Android are made by a variety of manufacturers. So the Galaxy tablet is just one example, and it's made by Samsung. But there are other companies making other tablets that are still in that Android range. So they can vary by hardware. And then when I'm referencing Android, that has to do with the mobile operating system or platform. So think about it's similar to the difference between a Windows, a PC person, or a Mac person. So these operating systems could be from Apple, could be from Google, that's the Android one, but also Microsoft has been releasing smartphones, BlackBerry, Palm, and they all have their own platforms or operating systems that they run. So the two main ones I get questions about in terms of use as assistive technology are Apple versus Android. So just to give you a summary of what the differences are, they differ in where to buy the actual device, again, the hardware of it. So the Apple products are at Apple stores or their vendors. I believe Target's a vendor, Micro Center, places like that. Versus Android, as I mentioned, their hardware is made by various manufacturers, and it's considered Android as long as it runs a platform from Google. So the manufacturer could be Samsung, it could be Nexus, it could be other manufacturers, Asus. So that's one difference in Apple versus Android, where to buy the device. But there's also a difference in where you buy the apps, and this is important. The Apple products run apps that are purchased through iTunes, and that's either an internet program or a downloadable computer program. So most of the things we're going to talk about today are available on iTunes. They're available on Apple products, and I'll explain why in just a moment. Versus the Android products are all available through Google's Play Store. It used to be called an Android market. So just because you see something in iTunes doesn't mean it's going to run on your Samsung product, because it might be running Android. And vice versa. Just because you have a great app on your Android phone doesn't mean you can buy an iPad and load it there. So that's another difference in Apple versus Android. A third difference is the number of available apps. You'll see that Android is catching up with 675,000 apps, but Apple got a little bit of a head start. You'll also see there a link for a special section of iTunes, of their App Store, called Special Education. And if you click that link or type it in, you'll see that iTunes, their App Store, will sort out some apps that are available for special education, for needs like communication. Oh, somebody's loading something. For needs like communication or reading, those are going to be things that Apple has shared. Versus on Android, the way you might search their market is to type in keywords. You're searching their Play Store and you might type in special education and see what apps come up. They haven't dedicated a certain section to sort out all those apps. The fourth difference between Apple and Android that I wanted to be sure to highlight are some of the accessibility features. So those are features that help the technology be able to be accessed by people with a variety of needs. Apple has been groundbreaking in the variety of built-in accessibility features they have in their products. And again, there's a link that you can click following the webinar to pull up that website. But they have features for people with low vision, things like VoiceOver that reads the screen, or Zoom, things like assistive touch for people with fine motor difficulties. And we're going to review that later. But you know that anything made by Apple, the iPod, the iPad, the iPad mini, will all have those same accessibility features standard and built in. Whereas on the Android side, their accessibility might vary by the product. So because they're all made by different manufacturers, there's no way to guarantee that the captioning on one phone is as good as the captioning on the tablet you want to buy. Most of the Android products have text-to-speech, that is, they'll read aloud what the printed text says, and they have a variety of vision or hearing support. A lot of them also have an alternate keyboard called Swipe, where you don't have to pick up your finger to move between letters, so that's a great feature for fine motor, people with fine motor difficulties, but again, that's going to depend on the product. So there's also a link there to look at later, which is information that Google provides to their app developers. It's things that they suggest app developers build in for accessibility. But again, since different people make different products for Android, they can't guarantee a standard like Apple can. So when we're summarizing, although Android has some great options out there, has a wider variety of manufacturers, so that means that you can get different sizes and different costs. They can maybe be cheaper or have built-in USB ports, things like that. Right now, the Android market has fewer apps, and we are just beginning to see some of those specialized apps for communication or for education. So today we're going to be sticking with iPad apps or iTunes apps because the Android market doesn't have very many yet that are dedicated to communication. So we're not saying that we are fully endorsing Apple products instead of other vendors, things made by Android or made by Google. But what we are saying is that today we're sticking with iPads because they've been out a little bit longer and their apps are more available. There are more available apps for communication within iTunes, so things that will load on iPods and iPads. Since we're sticking with iPads now, I wanted to highlight a couple of their built-in accessibility features that you guys might find useful. And if you see our handout that the Organizer just sent out in your chat bar that there is a link to some of the handouts. And so on this link, you'll see, or on this handout, I'm sorry, you'll see some links to more information about accessibility. But some of the ones we wanted to highlight are things that are available that show up in each operating system. Again, we talked about the operating system being unique to each product. So Apple's operating system, iOS, has regular updates, and each update they tend to add more and more accessibility features, which is great because they're trying to make this product work for more and more people. It also makes it hard for us to keep up with. So you'll want to check your iTunes page on your device to find out what version you're running and to find out if you have any updates. With the new iOS 6 update, for instance, some apps are having quirks now. They're not working quite the same because it's running a new system, and then everybody has to race an update as well. But for right now, at least, some of the accessibility features can be found by going to your device settings. That's a gray gear as the icon. And you go to general settings and into accessibility, and that's where you'll find some things that make this device easier for people to use. So one great one is assistive touch. You see the picture on the bottom right of this slide. This feature allows you to use just one finger or a stylus to control all the gestures. So some things that you might need to be able to move the screen for, like you can see in the example, it says rotating the screen or shaking it. If you have your device mounted to your wheelchair, it's not as easy to rotate it, but you can open up assistive touch in the accessibility features and use your stylus to push the rotate screen button, and that will rotate the screen or act as if the screen is rotating for you. So you don't need to be able to physically move the device anymore to control all of its features with assistive touch. A brand new feature with this last release is called guided access. And I heard some people refer to it as single app mode. This is something I've been waiting for ever since I started working with iPods and iPads. This is where we could open up a communication app for a student, turn on guided access, which I would turn on by putting in a password, and then they can only use that communication app. So they can't switch out and go into Angry Birds and play games without having my password. So that's a great way to make sure that this device is used for the purpose you want it to be used for. There are some issues surrounding single app mode or guided access, and if and when it's appropriate, and those links are on the handout as well. The last setting in accessibility that I thought you guys might find useful is called Speak Selection. If you go turn it on in the general accessibility settings, it will read the text aloud for you. So you can see then within any app, and this is the middle picture, when I highlight some text, it will offer me to either copy it or speak it. So I could highlight a whole section of an internet page and have it speak it to me, or I could just highlight a word that I don't know when I'm reading my audiobook and have it speak it to me. This Speak Selection feature should work in any app because it's part of the built-in accessibility. Okay. A couple of other issues on the next slide. Okay, we'll wait for the screen. I'm having trouble advancing the slide. Hold on just one second. All right. There we go. And okay, so we have some accessories, that can also help with accessibility. And so these are things that can help make the iPods or iPads more useful for people with disabilities. For instance, since we're all talking about communication today, you might have noticed that the built-in speakers on the devices aren't particularly loud if you're thinking of, for instance, a preschool classroom. So you might want to use something like a protective speaker case. You'll see the picture of the iMain X for the iPod Touch. That's in the top right of the screen. Or the iAdapter, and that's the next picture down, and it is a case that goes with the iPad. Both of these cases serve dual purpose. They protect the device itself, so you know, if it's dropped, it might not be as risky, and they also amplify the sound. So their speakers are quite loud if you turn them up all the way, which might make this more useful for people to use as a communication device. There's also accessories for mounting the devices. So you could attach something directly to the case and then buy a mount for instance, your wheelchair. That would be sold by a lot of companies that sell existing mount systems for wheelchairs, like Daisy. And then there's also some unique kind of multi-purpose systems. You'll see in the bottom right, that product is called modular hose or lock line, and it's a flexible tubing material that you could use. You can bend it to whatever shape you want or whatever angle you want. So you'll see there they've attached 2 different lock lines to the back of the iPad case, and then it's a very small picture, but you see they could either clip it to the table or clip it to the chair to mount it and hold it up. The last type of accessory I was going to cover is the stylus that you might use for an iPad. You saw on the previous slide a T-bar stylus, so that might be helpful for someone who has difficulty extending a single finger to use the iPad. So there's ways to get around that. But in general, the access of the iPad is nice because it is touchscreen that doesn't require pressure. It only requires contact for you to select. So if someone has some muscle weakness, they can still touch and use the iPad. There are a few alternate access methods developing, if you're familiar with those, things like switches and scanning. Right now there are switch interfaces that will connect by Bluetooth, and there are resources for more information about this on the handout. But you'll see in the bottom left or the bottom right, these would pair by Bluetooth with the iPad and then enable you to use a switch like that red button switch or a head switch to run the iPad. The thing I must highlight is that these features of scanning to be used with a switch have to be built into each app by each app developer. So if an app developer hasn't built in the scanning feature, you can buy this interface, but it will not work. So you have to find out which apps have built in this capability and then buy the interface to give it a try. So this is still very much a work in progress, in my opinion, in terms of access for the iPad. But on the handout is a link to a Spectronics article by Jane Farrell that's great for providing more information about that. Okay, and the last thing about access that I was going to cover is a couple of do-it-yourself ways to make the iPad easier to work. I've had several folks that aren't used to touch screen, and so they tend to rest their whole hand on the screen. That means that the screen of the iPad is reading your whole hand, and then when you touch somewhere else, it doesn't quite work. So one easy way to get around that is to use fingerless gloves. So you see in the picture just a latex, well, probably non-latex glove that you cut the one finger off of. So this means that you can touch your whole hand on the device, but it's only going to read that one fingertip because you need to be able to touch the device. They've also been selling, especially this winter season, a lot more touchscreen gloves that have a conductive patch on the thumb and the finger so that you can still access your touchscreen devices even though your hands are cold, or in our cases, even though your hand might have weakness and be hard to lift up. So that would give access in another way. So as I mentioned several times, there's more about accessibility features and links and resources for accessing iPads on your handout. Debbie and I also wanted to make sure that we discussed that iPads and iPods and mobile technologies in general are used for a range of purposes. So I said that they are used for assistive technology, and Debbie's going to take over next and talk more about how it's specific for communication. But these devices can also be used for work, for learning or therapy, and you see a big oval circle for play because a lot of times that's what it gets used most for. So we have to make sure we know what the purpose of the technology is so that we know if it's being used appropriately. And so, for example, if you are using this as a professional on the left-hand column, you might choose to use an iPad as a learning or therapy tool. So I, as a speech-language pathologist, could use an iPad to run articulation flashcards or make social stories. I could use it as a professional to collect my data. That's one type of use of an iPad. On the left-hand side is where we're focusing today. We're talking about using iPads as assistive technology. So it's for the family or the student with a disability to use. We're not going to be covering things like how you can best do your email or documentation as a therapist. We're going to be talking about using these apps for communication. And Debbie will be explaining her categorization of apps. I tend to explain it to people as low-tech, mid-tech, and high-tech, so terms we've been using in AAC, or augmentative and alternative communication, for a while. There are apps that are low-tech, like just a picture board. They don't even have sound. There are apps that are mid-tech. They have recordable buttons you can add pictures with. And then there are high-tech apps, things that have advanced language layouts and use synthesized speech, so I don't have to record the speech. It produces the speech for me. So that's where we're going to be going from here on out. I also wanted to mention, in terms of assistive technology, that iPads and iPods have a lot of apps and uses for people with hearing, vision, fine motor, or behavior issues as well. So there are other apps out there for those needs, and we'll leave it to other webinars to cover that part. But from here on out, we're going to be talking specifically about how these apps can be used for communication.
So now let's make sure that we make the best choice for the best voice. I wanted to start off with a survey that was taken just a couple of years ago, but I feel like it still is valid. When I do workshops and I hear people's experiences, I think this reflects where we are. After doing a survey, they asked questions about the iPods and iPad use. 53% of the mobile technology was provided without the benefit of an AAC evaluation. 68% of the mobile devices were provided by parents, which, again, we're excited to have everybody at the table. But then the next item, they surveyed your 5 favorite and your 5 would not recommend. And surprise, surprise, the same one was at the top of the list. So let's make sure that we make the best choice at the beginning. So on the market today, there's currently more than 200 AAC apps. So we're going to spend the next 20 minutes or so about how do we learn about them, how do we keep up with them, and how do we decide on the best one. A lot of us use listservs. We find out what people are thinking and using. There's trial and light versions available. For the brave, you can get in iTunes and poke around, although that has become very overwhelming. And we're also going to give you resources that focus only on AAC apps. If you get on iTunes, what I did last night, what I discovered is in a recent past, when I did a search for augmentative communication, there were not very many apps that came up, or there are a lot of other apps that were out there that they had not included a keyword. Actually, I think this was for AAC. Now when I put in AAC, a lot of people have caught on, and they have also included other apps which are probably good uses for the population, but they do not actually provide a voice in the true form of augmentative communication. So if you do a search there, just beware. A few of the web resources, we have a handout that I just shared with you at the top. So don't worry, we're going to allow you to do your own searches. Jane Farrell does a very nice job of keeping up with apps, and her information is posted on the Spectronics website. And she will give you a short description and then answer some important questions for you. You see those categories across the top. I'm going to allow you to cruise that at your own. And she has probably over 200 listed there now. So plan to spend some time doing some reading. Children's Hospital at Boston has put together a feature matching communication form, which you can sit down. There's 9 pages of it. It is very thorough. And you can take apps and review them. We're assuming at this point that you know what features you need on your app. This is a very excellent website I encourage you to go to for a lot of reasons. These gals have put together a rubric for evaluating the language of apps. What their focus is, and I highly support this idea, is how are you going to be communicating? What are your communication functions? And so they have a form that allows you to do some evaluation of apps that you're considering. Also, a website that I have put together. Under free tools and resources, we keep up with the apps that are out there. We keep up with what's new. If you look in the green bubble, and you can check at least every other month, we're updating apps and devices for you. And then if you go under AAC devices and apps, you can then choose apps with pictures or apps with spelling. And there's a little preview on iTunes button there. It'll take you to the Google version. So if you're in an organization like I am, where I work at the hospital, I can't get onto iTunes, but it'll take you to the Google version and you can review the information there. I invited everybody to share their professional comments as well. You have a way to do that, and this is in the free part on our website. But I also am going to use the same disclaimer and say that we do not endorse any specific apps over others. We just search out the quality apps for your consideration today. So what I'm going to do now, you have this form available to you, either now or that you can download later. We will give you categories. We have, I think, 4 or 5 categories that we'll go through briefly today. And they are robust, more features, starter apps, simple apps, and text-to-speech apps. In this, I'm going to go through very quickly what some of the general characteristics are, because what I personally do is I will compare apples to apples, meaning if I'm looking for a robust app, I want to be looking at other robust apps, not ones that have fewer features. And then I'm going to very quickly, it'll feel like flashing apps in front of your eyes. I will have time to say a brief item about some of them, and you will have access to this later on if you want to go back with the form that we've provided to you and make any notes. But the form that I've provided to you is to encourage you to do your own research and to make your own notes. The ones we call the robust, this is where they have a wide range of vocabulary included. They usually have a large number of picture icons, thousands, which means they cost more money because they have to pay for the graphics. They have various page layout options many times. Many can do both pictures and spelling. You get a higher quality and choice of voices. Again, that costs more money because they have to pay for those. The pre-made vocabulary options, if you notice, the robust ones are going to be the ones that have more, that cost more. You can formulate sentences using some core vocabulary. Note, they may be more complex to program, and they're usually more expensive because of all these options. I'm starting off with Prolo Quota Go because they've been with us from the beginning, so to speak. Sometimes it's called P2G. If these pages look familiar and you're still using them, then you're using an older version. They have a newer version which they updated this summer, which I highly encourage you to explore. They have a variety, 3 different vocabulary systems that they allow you to set up, all the way from very simple, like in the yellow one, to ones that have core vocabulary and more sophisticated. I definitely encourage you to read the manual because it talks about how to expand using core vocabulary in some nice steps. Alexicom has been out for a while, but they've recently come out with Alexicom Elements. What they have done is they've taken various ages, including children, teens, and adults, put some specific vocabulary together for you, and have it for sale for a very reasonable cost. Touch Chat Suite is available, and they have it very simple on the left, all the way to more sophisticated people that are going to generate things on the right. On some of these apps, what you're going to need to look for is, although they may have the same name, in this case, if you need one that is more generative, then you need to look for one called the Touch Chat for AAC. Again, the information I'm throwing out is just to mainly make you aware of all the different options out there and just kind of give you high five that you look for all the details. There's a new one that has come out that I was contacted about called the VAS. It has a nice set of core vocabulary. You'll notice in the message bar it has pictures available. On the right-hand side, not only does it do spelling, but it is one of the only ones that I know that do picture word prediction on the top row. So that would be worth checking out as well. And LAMP, Words for Life, has come out. This uses a Unity symbol system and very nice options available. They have 3 different levels available, and we encourage you to check that one out as well. Sonaflex is from one of our manufacturers, Tobii Technology, and this is the same software that is available on their devices. The app is free in one of its forms and very functional, especially for evaluation purposes. If you want to have a lot more freedom and customization, then their devices are the ones that give you more of that flexibility. Let's talk about devices with more features. Well, it varies with the amount of pictures provided. Sometimes you need to make sure if you want to do digital photos or picture icons, check and make sure it does what you need. They usually provide some pictures. Many times they do not do spelling. Whether you record your voice, you have synthesized voice, make sure it does what you want it to. The vocabulary offered may include pre-made pages that may be an additional cost. Some of them either have in-app purchases or other ways for you to get that information through sharing on a website. Some have the ability to formulate simpler sentences and phrases. And here the resources, website information, email support kind of varies, and they're usually mid-priced. Tap to Talk is one that we've known about almost from the beginning as well. They have done a nice job. When I checked their website last night, they have 8 different platforms that they can provide it on. So you might want to check on that. My Talk Tools is an example of a company that, again, has been out there for quite a while. What they do is they allow you to program it on a computer and through internet base, and then you can download it. And you can also do it on the device, but there is some benefits that people like to having it programmed on the computer, so keep that in mind. Another one that has come out recently, Autismate, does a nice job with scenes, visual scenes, and then what you see are extra markings in there that bring you some pop-up windows. At the bottom there's a message bar, and that would be worth consideration if you like and use visual scenes. My First AAC is a nice example of somebody that puts together vocabulary for a specific group, like toddlers. Image to Talk is a new one, where if you notice on the left-hand side, it talks about the scrolling roles up and down. In the images, you can take one row and scroll it out to the side. And then when you touch it, you get a full screen image. Go Talk Now is from one of our manufacturers, Attainment, that has made Go Talk for many years. They now have a free version where you can try it out and program some pages. Has a lot of nice variety of features, including accessibility using a switch. Talk Rocket Go. I wanted to highlight them. One of the reasons is they have an automatic backup. They have a nice supporter studio online, and they will say and answer the phone, and I've tried them out. They will provide you personal support. That does not come from many of the developers. Now let's talk about starter apps. This is a varied amount of pictures, or none at all. In many cases, you use your own photos. The voice type is often digitized. You record your own speech. Sometimes they offer basic starters, or you kind of start from scratch for simpler communication needs. Personally, sometimes that's what I like to do. Some you have the ability to formulate very simple sentences. They're less expensive since they have less features, and they're most easy to program due to less features offered. It's a good starter. I like to start off some people that I work with clinically. The moms find this very easy to use on an immediate basis. This is an example of one called Discover My Voice, pictures only. But look at that and see if those kind of pictures really are good discrimination for your user. Another thing I've had to teach people to do is how do you take good pictures that are clear? Another one here is an example of where they have some basic vocabulary included, and they do have words available. This is one of the simpler ones where you can put a sentence together, I want, and then you fill in the blank. Look to learn is one that for my individuals that like to swipe and can swipe through pictures and are motivated by that, they have that as one of their options. Seen and heard is a simple one where you can take a snapshot, build hotspots, have it talk. I heard a clever use of this is somebody will take a picture of a low-tech communication board and then go in and build the hotspots and build their own communication page, and it talks. Sounding board from our company that we've known for years in our field, AbleNet, has provided this as a free app. In addition, it also does switch access. And this is shown on an iPod, but it also works on an iPad and has up to 9 pictures you can use. This is an example I put in there to mention that there are some apps out there that are being developed by family members. This was developed for a child who is autistic on the spectrum, and there's a light version which you cannot customize, and if you like the way it acts, then you can go ahead and purchase it and customize it. Now the simple apps. These are single key or 2 key options. Additions of pictures may be limited or not possible. Few, if any, pictures are provided. Many times you use digitized speech, so recorded speech, and much of the time it is a lower cost and easier to program. There's one set, I believe it's Smarty Ears, that comes out with single situations, like you buy an app and you have an opinion. I like it, I don't like it. They have other ones for greetings, other ones for my turn, your turn. Again, nice and simple, easy to use. Tap Speak Sequence Plus is kind of the most complex one that you can buy. You have 1 message per hit, but you can have it move through sequentially. And on the left-hand side, you can see that you can have a variety of situations. Another one called Yes, No HD, although the initial page says yes, no, it also allows you to build up to 6 more pages where you can import your own pictures or just have words and bring up 1 page at a time. It's a nice option. And many of these maybe just cost $1.99 or $2.99. Finally, let's end up with our individuals who are spellers. These are for literate individuals who can spell. A few may also have some pictures, and a wide variety and quality of voices available. A caution there. There's free ones out there, but the voices are not very good, and they may not serve the individual using it. Features vary widely. In general, the more expensive, the more features are available. You want to look for things like word prediction. Maybe you need pre-programmed vocabulary, the ability to categorize, a variety of keyboard layouts, etc. So in the spelling, there are not as many options out there available, but let me go through a few. Assistive chat has been with us for a while, and it's a nice, simple, straightforward one that does a word prediction, easy to turn the speaker on and off, etc., etc. Verbally. Verbally has core words that help you, if people want to use them, can help you speed up your writing. It also has other nice features. What you're seeing here is all free. If you want to upgrade it, then they have more options available. But this is a nice free tool to download for evaluation purposes. I know that's what I have on my iPad. Speak It is another one. What I want to point out is on the left-hand side, you maybe want to consider, especially if it's going to be somebody's voice, that they have the ability to set the pitch, the voice speed, and some other things like that. So Speak It is another popular one. What about free or light apps? I'm going to give you a caution. Free or light doesn't necessarily mean that they are as appropriate as maybe in other areas. I know clinically I have some great free or light apps that I use for activities, but we want to make sure that you get them and they're customizable. Many times they're limited with their pictures, pages, or even voice quality. What you need to consider doing is after you evaluate them, and do the trial version. Some of them have web versions. Then you can upgrade for the full features. And there seems to be more text-to-speech options in this arena. Again, I'm going to refer you to practicalaac.org. This slide is old because now they have done over 90 some free or light versions of apps, and they have the list available on this website. So try the actual programming, see how it feels. We want to say that this is different than our devices. We don't have an opportunity to invite people out and show us how to program like we do our devices. Keep that as an option if that's still appropriate for you. But options that are being provided, many people are putting videos on YouTube or on their website. Some of them are now offering webinars, or they will have online instructions, and some of them even have built-in instructions. So explore those. Also want to tell you at this point, if you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I am overwhelmed, then I would like to give you an opportunity to try our website out. We have a product called AAC Apps Assistant. We have reviewed more than 200 apps. We have our criteria listed there on our website. And then we've sorted through and given you quality apps. We've thrown out more than half of the apps. They don't meet our criteria. What I'm going to give you at the end of this, or if you want to email us, is an access code which will allow you to try both the Apps Assistant and the Device Assistant. You can do basic searches using the categories we just reviewed. It will give you a list of apps. You can click on the ones that you want to look at more. Or what I recommend is if you have done your evaluation or to figure out what you need in an evaluation, use our advanced search. We have about 12 questions that you need to answer as specific as this, including like what type of symbols do you want, what page layout, how many pictures do you want it to already have, etc., etc. There's a little light bulb there that if you want more information about that question, it gives you other hints. It's very helpful information. And it will sort through all these apps for you and end up giving you a side-by-side comparison, which usually prints out to be about 2 pages. So if you want to try that, and you can also do the same thing with our Device Assistant, I am going to give you a code shortly. And what we want to point out is that the developers and the manufacturers don't pay us for this. Instead, we feel like we're doing a service for you. We hope we're saving you time and helping you do some appropriate matching. And it's a very low cost. It can start as low as $4.99 a month. So Carrie's going to finish telling you about her resources, and then we're going to open it up for questions.
Okay, and Debbie, did you have the access code on a later slide?
Yes, it'll be right after this.
Okay, great. So I really appreciate all of Debbie's resources on AAC Tech Connect. I also manage a website that is specific to the state of Pennsylvania in terms of who pays us to run it. It's called communicatep.wikispaces.com. It covers a variety of information about AAC, some of it specific to PA, but a lot of it applicable to everyone nationwide. And there's a whole page on iTechnology. So if you click on iTechnology, you'll see a presentation that I've done about apps, a list of apps that we have loaded and sorted by categories, and links to more resources like the accessory features that we have. And Debbie's Apps Assistant is also linked on this page. Another resource is PIAT, Pennsylvania's Initiative on Assistive Technology. If you click once more, Debbie. PIAT is the AT, or Assistive Technology Act program for the state of Pennsylvania. If you're not in Pennsylvania, you can use that link to find your own state's program. And this will provide you all the AT Act programs, provide information and assistance about assistive technology. So you could call 800 lines or email to get general information. A lot of times we can refer you to places for more specific help. And the final resource I wanted to mention, if you click once more, are the UCEDS, University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities. Pennsylvania, as you said, is the Institute on Disabilities here at Temple, but each state has at least one. You can find your states at that link. And these centers provide a variety of information, not just about assistive technology, but we do education, research, and service related to developmental disabilities. So another good place to find more information and referrals.
And AAC Tech Connect, I've told you about our online clinical tools. If you're on our website and you want to learn more about our workshops and trainings, we would be happy for you to get that information. Or you can email us directly. And I have the info email down there, and all of this information is on our website as well. So we wanted to make sure that you left with new resources today. We hope we accomplished that goal. Hope we've given you some ideas. I know I've learned some things in working with Carrie. And here's your 7-day trial. Your access code that you need to put in when you go to our website are the two organizations that helped host us today. So thank you to both of them. It would be is that supposed to be AAIDD dot Isaac, ISAAC. So I need to modify that. I think that's what the access code is on the back end. So it's AAIDD dot Isaac, ISAAC. So now there would be time for questions.
Thank you so much, Debbie and Carrie. This is Danielle Weber with AAIDD, and I just want to make sure for those of you who didn't quite catch that access code, we will be sending it out to everyone who registered for the webinar, so you'll be able to catch it via email shortly after we end here today, so not to worry. We do have several questions that have come in. I just want to remind everyone that your lines are muted, so please send your questions in through the chat box, and we'll address them in the order that they're received. The most popular question I think we've gotten is whether or not the products that you discussed or the handouts that you discussed and the PowerPoint will be available. So I want to answer that myself by saying that those same documents will be in the email that you receive shortly after we're done. So let's get on to the content-related questions. We do have several here. The first person who had a question is writing in saying, okay, you referenced a survey conducted by Schertz et al. I'm curious what journal that research was published in.
And actually, it was presented at ASHA in 2010. It was not journal reviewed and published. What I can say about research in this field is the field is changing and growing so quickly that by the time we have research done and presented, there's usually a time lapse. And I think we're going to find that surveys like this that are well done by the gals, they're out of Wichita, Kansas, is going to give us valid information along the way. And if anybody is interested in doing research, I know they're always looking for people. So, you know, what I would be able to do, let me make a note, is let me see if I can find that reference and maybe give it to you. Or if you want to email me individually, that might be helpful.
Okay, perfect. The next question that we have is, this participant is wondering whether or not there are any user groups you know of that would provide feedback, comments, or criticism for ideas about the various apps.
The one that I follow the most, and Carrie, I know you follow another one, if you are a speech pathologist and you have access to, you know, if you're certified and you want to join the AAC group, which is Division 12, then they are very actively discussing apps and other iPod issues. It's probably the ongoing most popular topic.
Yes, so that's ASHA's Division 12, Special Interest Group 12 listserv. I also follow a listserv from Quiet, Q-I-A-T, and it's from Kentucky University, and it is professionals in assistive technology across disciplines. So not everyone is a speech-language pathologist. There are special educators, occupational therapists, a variety of folks, as well as parents and people with disabilities. So the Quiet listserv, I think if you just Google Quiet and listserv, you should be able to find it. It's a very, very active listserv. So expect, 20 to 50 emails a day. You might want to have them sent elsewhere than your inbox because your phone will be ringing off the hook or beeping off the hook with new emails. But they have a lot of information, especially a lot of the information about the accessories. And, the idea of just cutting the fingertip off of a glove, that was from Quiet. So they have very practical discussion on there.
Okay, thank you. The next question we have is, how would you suggest people outside of Pennsylvania or the United States proceed in terms of finding resources, Canada, for instance, or elsewhere around the world?
I think Isaac, one of our hosting organizations here, that is what they focus on. And I know that there is a directory that many of us are part of, and I am not sure if that is anything that is available to the general public, and I wonder if Heather can address that. Okay, I'm not hearing.
While we're getting that information, I want to...
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Heather.
Oh, I'm here. The directory is actually available to members only on our website, but we have a lot of information on our website that you might want to check out.
Okay, and to step back in, this is Carrie. iTunes does use different, it has different app stores for different locations. So the United States has its app store. Canada would have a separate one. However, most of the apps are available in all of them, or at least in, all English speaking, let's say. So for instance, Spectronics, Jane Farrell's work, Debbie and I both referenced, and she is out of Australia. So if you go to her website and see her chart where she lists apps, the prices are in Australian dollars, but all the information is still the same. So for someone, for instance, in Canada, they should still be able to use the information that Debbie and I are offering, maybe to adjust the prices or adjust the type of store where you buy the equipment, but the rest of the information should be pretty translatable.
And I can't speak highly enough about the resources Carrie gave for finding out who your local assistive technology group is, because most states have that available. And in many states, there are many good resources.
And we actually had a participant write in that apparently there's a Facebook group, Augmentative Communication Resources and Help, that's a forum, talks a lot about apps relative to AAC. So that might be just one more place to look to.
That would be great. I did hear about that at Isaac, I think, just recently, at USAC, this summer.
Okay, so we have several more questions. We'll try to get to as many as we can. We've only got a few more minutes left here. So the next question that we have is, what is the first question you ask when someone walks in with an iPad?
I'd like to hear our participants' answers as well. I ask, oh, this is lovely. Now, what do you want to do with it? Because many time their idea is their child really liked the iPad, and then I ask, well, what were they doing with it? And many times what you find is that they have other categories usually playing on it that heighten their interest. Not that you can't use it to develop skills. I've had many successes with that. But when they walk into me as an augmentative communication specialist, I want to make sure that we're talking about communication.
And since I work with a broader range of assistive technology, especially my coworkers, we work with assistive tech not just for communication, but for vision and hearing and behavior. I tend to ask, who is going to be using this? Tell me about the person that's using the iPad. What are their skills? What are their needs? What is a challenge in their daily life right now that you're hoping assistive technology could help with? And then we can look to apps that might fit that need.
Okay, thank you. The next question we have is fairly specific. There's a woman who's writing in who has a son with complex needs, and he dictates to Dragon for his writing assignments in school, which he then in turn texts to his mother on his iPad, who cuts and pastes it to her email, and then she cuts that and pastes it into Word so he can edit it. She's wondering if there's a better technology that will print directly from his device.
That's going to depend on the version of the operating system that he is running. In the newer operating systems, there are some options to print. It sounds like you also might want to look at the app that is comparable to Word that's available on iPads. I believe it's called Notes, but I'll double check. And that would be a way that he can cut and paste from Dragon to the app on its own. And then the printing, you're going to need to Google some suggestions on how to set up because it's all wireless. So there can be some tangles with the wireless, especially at school districts where they might not allow students to have access. But if they can work through those issues, it should help. And that app is published by Apple, I believe, and it's called Pages. I'm sorry, Pages. Pages is their version that's comparable to Word. They have one comparable to Excel that's called Numbers, and one comparable to PowerPoint that's called Keynote. And I'll put these in the chat window as well.
Thanks, Carrie. I just typed in Pages.
Okay.
We are at time. I want to ask one last question, end on an optimistic note here. What do you think the future will be for this technology for people with disabilities?
What I would say is the possibilities are expanding very rapidly. Having been in this field a long time, I have never seen the enthusiasm and things happening as quickly as they are. I think the challenge comes to be clear about what you need and find ways that you feel comfortable keeping up with it. But you know, just look where we were 3 years ago before the iPad and now where we are. So who knows? And Carrie?
Yeah, I think it is an exciting time for technology. It's great that more and more manufacturers are including accessibility features that help everyone use their products. And so I see a lot of things moving to cloud-based. So that means that I wouldn't have to set up my own special computer with my own special software. Maybe my software is saved on the cloud. And for instance, Dragon that the last person mentioned could just pull up at the library computer when I sign in because it's saved on the cloud, and then pull up at my grandma's house as I sign in because it's saved on the cloud. So I'm hoping for some of the technology changes to make the accessibility features or the specialized programs or software we're using be more portable and reach more people that need it.
Thank you. So I just want to obviously reiterate our gratitude for Debbie and Carrie being on the line today. Thank you so much for your presentations. I know I'm going to take a lot away from this, a lot of new information and some great stuff that participants sent in too. So this was a nice collaborative effort. And we are going to wrap up here today with just a quick reminder. I want to reiterate that the intent of the webinar, of course, was not to endorse one particular product over another, and that AAC tools and methods obviously need to be selected according to the individual's own needs. So all the examples presented today were presented simply for illustrative purposes and shouldn't be regarded as applicable to other individuals without proper evaluation. So on behalf of AAIDD and Isaac, I want to thank everyone for joining us on the line. This was a fabulous hour. Thank you once again, Carrie and Debbie. And did you have any last slides you wanted to pull up before we close?
Nope, just thank you very much for taking time to be with us as well and for the opportunity.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone, and have a great morning, afternoon, or evening, whatever time it is in your time zone. Thank you.